Pajama flip.
Pajama flip.
Pajama flip.
This is a video about the Honda NC750X. To give a bit of history about the bike, Honda released the NC700X in 2012. NC stands for New Concept, and the bike was built to be pretty much the perfect commuter bike. It was a chain-driven 670cc, 51 brake horsepower, Euro 3 compliant motorbike available in manual and DCT automatic gearbox. What is quite unique about the bike is that it has its fuel tank moved up under the back seat, and because of the shape of the engine, instead of having a fuel tank you have a large storage compartment where the fuel tank would normally be. The bike sold reasonably well, and then in 2014 the engine was upgraded to 749cc, raised in power to 54 brake horsepower. It was then restyled in 2016, given LED front headlights, colour LED dashboard, and had a slight increase in the capacity of the storage department. Probably the biggest difference was though it then met Euro 4 emission standards. In 2019 it had rework including 30mm lower ride height, 4 brake horsepower increase to 58 brake horsepower, and ride-by-wire. So my bike that I'm talking about was a 2016 post-facelift 750X DCT. I bought it in January 2017 with less than 300 miles on the clock, and then sold it in June 2019 with 29,000 miles on the clock. I commuted daily around a 60-mile round trip into London and back, and I took the bike to France on 4 occasions and around Spain on 1 for holidays. Moving on to the bike itself, the NC750X's engine is essentially half a Honda Jazz engine. It's very low revving, it's got lots of torque and a nice sort of thrummy feel to it. My big criticism is it's a chain drive, and for a commuter bike where you're going to have to oil the chain an awful lot if it's a chain bike, it would have been nice for it to be a shaft drive. The gearbox is a dual clutch transmission. It is a good match for the engine. It has a drive mode and then 3 sport modes. For me, I found most of the time having the bike in drive was perfectly fine, and then because it was difficult to change between sport setting, I'd have it set so that you had it on sport 3 most of the time, which you could flip to really easily whenever you wanted to, for when you were overtaking or similar. I also drove the manual on a number of occasions. I was given it as courtesy bikes, that sort of thing, and it was really good too. The suspension of the bike is fairly basic, but it's pretty good. It deals with most things. I've got a Honda Africa Twin now, and that does cope slightly better, particularly obviously over rough terrain. But apart from some crashing on very poor roads, in general the suspension on the NC750X is really good. The brakes are fine. It's got a single front disc brake up front. It will pull the bike up nice and quickly, but it can be a little lacking in feel, and if you're really pushing the bike it does feel a bit like you'd want a bit more. Comfort wise, the fairing provides good weather protection. The screen itself on the standard bike is a little bit small. The standard seat is comfortable for commuting, but as a tourer, after a couple of days of long riding, my bum was hurting. The seat height itself, well, I'm 5'8", about 68 inches or 173 centimeters. The seat is 830 millimeters high, which isn't bad. However, it is fairly wide, so you need to be a bit careful and check if you're not on the massively tall side. My current bike, the Honda Africa Twin, it's 851 millimeters high on the seat on the lowest setting, and because it's a thinner seat though, I really don't notice the difference between that and the NC. Equipment wise, the standout points are it has an LED headlight. It's really good for others to see you, but not so good for you to see in the dark. The LED rear light is really clear. The storage box where the petrol tank should be is brilliant. You can get a full face helmet, and since I changed the bike I really miss that aspect. The fuel tank being under the back seat is a little bit of a pain. You have to get off the bike to refuel, for example, but it's not really that much of a bother if truth be told. For me, because I use the bike a lot, I put a fair few accessories on it. I think the first one would be the screen. I started off with a Givey screen, which I wasn't terribly happy with. I then put an added deflector on top, which was ugly, but it did push the wind over the front of my visor a fair bit, and it was a lot more comfortable. I then moved to a Fuji screen which included the wind deflector, and that was absolutely brilliant. I thoroughly recommend that. I had hand guards fitted to the bike to stop the wind on my hand. They did a really good job. They were just Givy ones again. They took a couple of hits, but they survived it fine. I put heated grips on the bike. They were Daytona heated grips. They worked well, certainly heated your hands up nicely, but the actual controller itself could get confused at some points. The seat itself, as I said, it did get a little uncomfortable, so I upgraded it for a Shad comfort seat, and that made the world of difference without compromising the ride height. It was a little bit fiddly to fit, but once it was on, it was really, really good. Luggage wise, I had Givy panniers and a top box. They were the Trekker variety, which were really, really good and really nice quality. However, the quality of the rack itself wasn't the best, and it's not the easiest to fit. Once on though, it was fine. The other thing I had was a Honda center stand, which is an absolute must if you've got a chain drive bike, because it makes it so much easier to do the maintenance. So how did the bike survive the 30k roughly that I put on it? When I first had it, it lived outside for about the first year and a half, and you would expect that to cause some rust and pitting, etc. But in actual fact, it wasn't too bad at all. I cleaned it infrequently, to say the least, but I did service it regularly. I also routinely checked the chain to make sure it was clean and re-oiled it whenever necessary. Tyre wise, I'd run on Michelin Pilot Road 3s, 4s or 5s, which really suited the bike. I dropped the bike twice, which obviously did a little bit of damage, but only a little bit. The panniers actually saved it. There was some paint peeling on the exhaust by the time I let the bike go, and some oxidization on the engine covers, plus a couple of minor scrapes from where I dropped it. Apart from that, it really stood the test of time. You wouldn't have known the age of the bike to look at, and to ride, it was still going beautifully. So would I recommend the bike? I changed and got rid of my NC750X because I wanted something with a little bit more power, and the Africa Twin gave me that. But in truth, I think the NC is a better bike. The match of engine and gearbox is brilliant, and there is nothing you really need to do with a bike on the road that this won't deliver. If you were to compare it to a car, it would be a Toyota RAV4. Nice to drive but not sparkling, looks good but not too flash, and will do pretty much anything you would want it to do. Though I don't plan to change my bike yet, when I do, now that I've got the need for power up my system, I will go back to an NC. Yes, I would recommend it. I just wish that when they did the update this year, they'd changed it to an 850 engine and put shaft drive on it.
Fujama flip.
Fujama flip.
Fujama flip.